very much. Um, Now it's going to be Carla Groom, who is the head of strategy at the Child Poverty Unit, where she's been since May last year, and she's going to discuss Tracy's excellent paper.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd actually, if I may, I'm going to comment a little bit on both because I think there's some really interesting parallels with the international side as well. Just a little bit of context. The Child Poverty Unit is a joint unit between Department for Work and Pensions, the Treasury and Department for Education, and we just a month or so ago published our National Child Poverty Strategy. It's the first one since the Child Poverty Act was passed last year. So that has given an opportunity both to show how we're going to move forward to meet the targets of virtually eradicating child poverty by 2020, but it's also an opportunity for the new government to set out its view and agenda for attacking disadvantage, and it's coming at that in quite a lot of different ways. So I'm just going to make a few comments about Tracy's fascinating presentation. I think that the myths are definitely problems that sort of we wrestle with on a daily basis, but actually I'm not sure that that they're coming through in our strategy. I think actually the government is really keen to not say that poverty plus a pound equals fairness, that as soon as you're in a job and you're just high enough up to be out of benefits level, that you're okay. That actually, especially from my perspective, when they've got children, that those children can still suffer when somebody's in work poverty, that we need to look at all families that are in low incomes and look at what kind of support we can give to their children to make sure that they can go on to have the best opportunities available, and the same as anybody from any other background. And this brings together a number of different perspectives across government. You've got there's this life chances approach, which was sparked off with the commissioning of Frank Field to do a review of poverty and life chances. Again, taking a broader than income approach, looking at for things like early years provision, helping with parenting skills, things that can actually invest in young people to make sure they have really quite radically different lives from those of their parents. Also brings together the social mobility agenda, which is Nick Clegg has led that that tranche of work. And he's very much about saying, well, even once you've got on the first rung of the ladder, to borrow Tracy's analogy, how can we make sure that we can keep people going up them? The first rung isn't good enough. How can we make sure that people have second chances if they're unlucky, or even if they're going out of the labour market to have children? How can we make sure that there are opportunities, that professions aren't closing down? There's also the early intervention agenda, which is about looking at families that are in need and saying, okay, before there's a real crisis here, what can we do? What can we use evidence-based programs to intervene early and prevent things like teenage pregnancy, educational failure? And finally, when we talk about multiple barriers and all the kind of complexities that can be involved in managing a household situation, the social justice agenda is very much about looking at those families and saying, no, we're not going to blame them for the situation that they're in. We're going to say, what can we do to help? How can we, for example, bring together a caseworker who's looking at problems to do with health and disability, the caseworker that's looking at problems to do with getting into work, going into hospital, how can we bring all these services together for you? So I think that these are very much issues that we're wrestling with at the moment, and the thing is that they're not straightforward at all about how you fix them. The reforms that we've put forward in the strategy are things that we can start fixing radically straight away. We can fix the using the universal credit. We can fix welfare reform. We can fix the system that at the moment is complicated. People don't want to get engaged with it because they know that it takes ages to get on, it takes ages to get off. You don't know how much you're solely going to get. It's not a transparent system. The universal credit will be much more streamlined, much more simple, and hopefully because it brings together so many different benefits into one pot, it will be a bit more normal to take universal credit, and it will be a bit less stigmatizing. And I hope that it would also bring us closer to those kinds of individuals who at the moment we don't even know who they are. If they're not interacting with the benefit system, we don't necessarily have any way of getting in touch with them. But if Universal Credit can make that partnership work a bit more closely, that provides a route for then delivering more services to them. At the moment, there's very little that we can do as a national government about that group of individuals, although we would very much support any kind of local efforts and local initiatives to help them. I think I'm just going to quickly, if I may, I don't want to take too long, but just to comment on what I think are really interesting parallels with the approach that we're taking in child poverty strategy, with the ones that are the ideas that are being recommended in the international arena. I thought that it was really interesting. We talk about targeting the poorest and those with multiple problems. So that would be very much Prime Minister's campaign to look at the families with multiple problems and say, we're going to get these families out of chaotic situations. We're going to dedicate resources. We're going to dedicate caseworkers to sorting out these families. We are going to make sure that the poorest get the resources that are so tightly constrained at the moment. The second recommendation about causes of poverty, that is the whole mantra of the approach to child poverty from the coalition government. They say we have been treating the symptoms, we have not been treating the causes here. If there are problems with incentives because of the poverty, the benefits trap, we need to simplify the benefit system so that people can get to a straightforward taper of how much of the benefits they can keep as they go into work, instead of cliff edges and enormous marginal deduction rates, which is when somebody takes on an extra hour of work and loses most of the money they would earn from that. We definitely need to look at skills issues and ways in which we can make sure that people aren't stuck in low-paid jobs. And there are a number of skills initiatives around that area. The data quality is hugely important, which is why we're not just focusing on income measures, though they're important. We have set up a whole range of new indicators that will measure everything from low birth weight for poor children to rates of worklessness, children in workless households. And finally, the fact that you've got to be committed to eradication. We are, just as a government, very committed to the 2020 targets of abolishing child poverty. So I think there's some really neat analogies, actually, across what are some quite different problems. And I'll shut up there.
Thank you very much indeed.